Alrighty, folks. It is the end of GP Zakros, at least for me. Let's talk about how the deck performed, how the field kind of panned out, and some thoughts on how this deck could get through the rotation, because we are creeping up on the rotation. So I'm going to try and break this down into chunks, and we'll start with just thoughts and feelings about the tournament and this deck's place in the tournament. Um, so I have mixed feelings. There are definitely some games where I felt like the things we were getting to do were properly unfair. I like Revolt of the Palace a lot as a value engine. But I think my tentative thoughts on Revolt of the Palace are, while I think it's a very, very powerful value engine if it can hit the battlefield, the time it takes to get it into play and the weight that comes into having to commit to Revolt of the Palace as your play on turn 5, and that's assuming you get it on curve, um, compared to playing out multiple other things from your hand that might, collectively be 5 mana, because everything in your deck that isn't instant or sorcery is going to cost somewhere in the range of 1 to 3 mana. Um, there were a lot of times where I just stared at Revolt of the Palace in my hand and thought, I could gamble for Revolt of the Palace to hit something meaningful, but there's no guarantee it does so, and I could actually suffer some seriously grave consequences for going for the Revolt of the Palace. But if I go for the known quantities in my hand first, then I can have a better control over slowing down my opponent. Um, there are some decisions I made that I think could be better at slowing down my opponent to buy some time to make Revolt of the Palace come online. Um, but I think ultimately, Revolt of the Palace, while it is a very, very strong engine tool once it's put into play, I almost am hesitant to say that it is truly going to be a constructed pedigree all star. The deck building demands are just so high, and while we have seen cards like Revolt of the Palace perform really well with some very high demands on your deck building, I gesture at A Journey Begins and Contest Coordinator, those often come at a low enough opportunity cost of being cheap spells that replace themselves. In the case of Contest Coordinators, replaces itself while developing something on the board as well. And while Revolt of the Palace generates far more value over time, the 5 mana investment is a lot to ask to get it into play. So while I still deeply love playing Revolt of the Palace, my thoughts on this card in particular have softened. But I don't want to just say that this deck is bad, discard it, don't bother with it, because I do think there are a lot of ideas here that are really effective. And the biggest question that this deck has is asking in general, and we got to see that question put to the test in our last match, is why play Revolt of the Palace and play the white splash at all if you give up Damn to Hell. So Damn to Hell and the mono black core that we ran up against in the quarterfinals, uh, really strong. Even if we didn't get to suffer the brunt of how good Damn to Hell is in that particular matchup, it is by itself just a very strong removal tool that buys you a lot of time. And playing Damned Hell comes with some other nice incentives, such as getting to run 4 copies of Heap Ludicon. Um, so while I think we do have some nice things going on, I think Heap Ludicon, very good creature land, Damn to Hell, really good removal spell, and there are plenty of instant and sorceries that could be worth trying, even if they're not necessarily in the main deck. Our opponent wasn't on a lot of instant and sorceries in the main. They were on the 4 Damn to Hell and then 2 other non-permanent spells. And then otherwise, everything in their deck was an eligible hit for a Revolt of the Palace if they had ever integrated one with a Data Weaver. So their deck was actually a good Revolt of the Palace deck without even being in white. So there's a conversation worth having of things we could learn from the mono black control deck to tune up this shell in its own right as the white black revolt strategy. Um, but I think the first lesson we can learn is that 22 lands is too few. The games where I was struggling the most were games where I was just doomed on the outset because of awkward amount of lands in the opening hand, and just not enough meaningful board presence in the remaining spells that I had to keep to make that low land count or awkward land count hand work. While I liked the theory of using Coalesced Core plus Coalesced Mesa to make them pain lands, the reality is that only one would come up and not the other a large number of the time. And while I like Coalesced Core, I think Mesa being just that like little bit of fixing these hurting at all is awkward, and I don't think you ever want to go down to like no coalesced lands in a deck like this, just because the mana is so awkward. But I think some consideration for maybe playing fewer of these and playing perhaps Temple of Origins would have been worthwhile to just have more lands that don't hurt us. More copies of Omen to Slaughter, Pilotizer's Sealing Strike all could have been worthwhile as well. Just more targeted removal or like cheap interaction would have been really nice. We're so pressed for good, cheap interaction. And on that same metric, I do want to say one of the things that I really liked in some of the times it came up, Inklight Dancer really did outperform my initial expectations. While I don't think this card is... much like I don't think Revolt of the Palace is like meta defining, I don't think Inklight Dancer will be meta defining by any measure, but I do think this card has a home in this format. I do expect to see more Inklight Dancer moving forward, or at least I hope we will see more Inklight Dancer moving forward, because this card has so much clean flexibility. I think any deck that is on Contest Coordinator or A Journey Begins that is in black is going to want to look at Inklight Dancer as a way to find a removal spell off of those effects, especially as the go-to removal spells off of those effects, like Omen of Slaughter, are vanishing in the next standard tournament in September. Otherwise, Exorcist of Errors, Data Weaver, Corpse Pyrofiend, very strong core. I think so long as none of these cards experience major changes in any future patches, this will likely remain a strong core moving forward. The fourth Corpse Pyrofiend is great, but there is one big issue with Corpse Pyrofiend in this particular shell, which is that if we don't have a Data Weaver, the integrates really don't do much. This is kind of just a Scavenging Ooze with extra steps. And the nice thing about Scavenging Ooze is it gains you life, it puts counters on itself, so it can be a meaningful scaling threat. And the same cannot be said for Corpse Pyrofiend. Now, yes, it can steal keywords, and like Magical Christmas Land, we steal Indestructible off of a god, or steal Lifelink and Flying off of a Looming Psyhawk. But the reality is that Corpse Pyrofiend needs to either just be good enough on its own, or you need to have enough that cares about integrate for Corpse Pyrofiend to, I think, really thrive. With that in mind, Data Weaver, powerful card, very strong card. Earthly Penchants. Earthly Penchants is, I think, something that this deck just needs to look at. I think if you are... Oh, whoop, I needed to do more brackets. Earthly Penchants. I think you need to... I think I need to face the reality that a Data Weaver core with Corpse Pyrofiend needs to run Earthly Penchants as well. Because the reality of Data Weaver and Earthly Penchants is that they are both individually good cards. And Corpse Pyrofiend is an okay card that is really dependent on those good cards to go from okay to great. And when Corpse Pyrofiend is taking those, is in play with Earthly Penchants or Data Weaver, it really does rapidly go from okay to great. Also, Corpse Pyrofiend, just any time that graveyard strategies crop up, this thing being able to have a natural way to prey upon graveyard strategies is just going to be nice moving forward for any deck that approaches this integrate package. But so I feel like, we're approaching a pretty clean 16-card core of Fiend, Weaver, Errors, Earthly Penchants for future formats. So that's a clean 16 right there that's rotation-proof. Where like the earliest that any of these cards rotates is all three of the integrate cards rotating next May. So we've got a bit of time to spare for these cards to really shine, so long as they dodge patches. Looming Psyhawk didn't feel as important as I hoped it would. I was really hoping for there to be more decks that really cared about making tokens, but Looming Psyhawk just couldn't find enough matchups where it mattered. And even in the matchup where it was most important, which was against the Naya Tokens deck, it just kind of felt not enough, especially when we were on the draw. Cyhawk just doesn't come down fast enough to stop the token generation out of the Naya tokens deck. So I'm kind of softening on looming Cyhawk as well. I feel like Tick. Let's pull up Tick real quick. Or sorry, Click. Click is a worthwhile consideration for an anti-tokens card. While Cyhawk has more meaningful impact thanks to Corpse Pyre Fiend, and can also just be relevant as a 2/1 flyer with lifelink, even just as like a flash threat to come down and like mess up combat math. Click is just a strong interactive piece on its own right, and especially as rotation is going to be seeing our 1 minute interaction go away. The likelihood that we could actually want to put a charge counter on Click to clean up 1-drops is getting a little higher. Lay Shards felt fine. It's kind of a lot like just playing a Chromatic Sphere, because oftentimes I was just playing this and it was 2 mana, cycle, gain 1 mana. Though being able to develop Lay Shards early and build up to mana is still very nice. I'm not sure if it's something that needs to be in a Revolt of the Palace shell, but it's fine enough. The big disappointments for me, Athreos, Gold-Eyed. I wanted to believe in Athreos. We saw him very sparingly, and the times where we did see him, he did a whole lot of nothing, which really bums me out. I was really hoping for Athreos to get to put in some good work in a couple matchups, but even when we were boarding in Athreos, I just felt like it was awkward, and there were a lot of occasions where I would entertain the idea of boarding in Athreos and face the reality that the one in my deck is already not that great. I think this could be cool. It's mostly a brawl card. So Athreos not super stellar in that regard. Chronicle of Extinction. I know. Give me a second. Me talking about disappointments with this deck and then saying Chronicle of Extinction sounds weird because I am the Chronicle complainer of the community. I hate this card with every fiber of my being. And I do think it's very funny that I hate this card so much that it felt kind of just whatever. But I will give credit where it's due, which is that while I think the flexibility of this card is unparalleled, the reality is that the format is picking up in pace in a couple different ways. The aggressive decks are just so good at getting underneath Chronicle of Extinction and going wide of it. EO is a great example of just all of their creatures being 3/3s. Chronicle Extinction can't clear that, and the Edict mode is not going to matter if they have enough creatures in play. And if they didn't have enough creatures in play, why did they play EO? So the hand attack mode is really the only thing with Chronicle that I think is particularly valuable. And at that rate, we already have Path of Phaenax's Touch, and our opponent's graveyard doesn't exactly needs to go away because we got Path of Phaenax that cares about them having 8 or more cards. Corpse Pyre Fiend wants to eat their graveyard. So the hand attack mode, exiling the graveyard, while I think that is my least favorite component of this card, even that just kind of proved to be an awkward bit of tension here. I do think in cases where Chronicle is good, having more Chronicles is always better. I do think this is still a very solid anti-control card, but I kind of wish I was on like a 4th Path of Phaenax in the sideboard rather than like a 4th Chronicle. So yeah, put it down in your history books, folks. I'm saying I was underwhelmed by Chronicle of Extinction. I'm not saying this card's bad. I think this card's still really, really good, but it just did not shine to its fullest potential here, which is not too surprising. This deck is so heavily bent towards permanence that Chronicle of Extinction just looks a little awkward in that regard. And I do think, if we're shifting out the looming Cyhawks, then we go down on the number of things Chronicle hits on the -2/-2 mode on our side of the field, which is nice. But we are going up potentially a Corpse Pyre Fiend, so that is a little awkward. And then I talked about the land count in a general sense, and I talked about the coalesced lands, but I do also want to talk about I just wish I'd had like a little bit more utility in my mana base. I wish I'd included any artifact or enchantment hate or removal beyond just the 2 ceiling strikes. There's definitely a lot of faulty deck building choices here, even if I think the core idea is really, really strong. Otherwise, sideboard, I think archival storage is really solid in the situations where it's good. I think Soul Guide Lantern is just a good card. There's no shockers there, but I think the format is going to have some very interesting texture in the wake of Soul Guide Lantern's departure come rotation. So that'll be very interesting to see. I've already talked about Looming Cyhawk and Athreos in the main deck. Talked about Chronicle in the main deck, but let's talk about the last two sideboard cards we have not discussed. Starting with Fall of Tracks, this was an embarrassing decision. This was a very embarrassing include, and I frankly don't have any excuses. I should not have included this card in this deck, because so much of our value can come from Data Weaver, which is just so utterly at odds with Fall of Tracks. And as it turned out, that even when there were a couple targets for Fall of Tracks, we just didn't care. And the reality of Fall of Tracks, especially right now, is that there are a lot of things we cannot remove with Fall of Tracks. I think we ran into a bunch of opponents who had very low curves, and so they just got to completely ignore what we were doing with Fall of Tracks throughout the GPs. Just going back through and looking at the brackets, we ran up against a like white-blue Swablu Seas deck that curved out at 3, and whose only 4 drops or higher were Rain Dance and Primordial Seas in the sideboard. Then we ran up against Lilithor, whose curve topped out at 3 again, and who had no 4 drops in the sideboard. Then we ran up against Kumrak, whose curve topped out at Lifehacker as the only 4 drop in the main, and then no 4 drops permanents in the sideboard. And then Cat and Tree curved out at 3. Platypeople, despite having a lot of very big haymakers, only one of Solis Syndicate Pariah in the full 75. So yeah, we really didn't have a lot of opponents who had any remotely meaningful targets for Fall of Tracks. So even ignoring the anti-synergy of that third chapter, this was just a bad meta call all around. And that's just discussing the decks we did run up against. I do think there are a lot of other decks in the field where Fall of Tracks looks really sad. So I think last hurrah for Fall of Tracks, really awkward. The one shining point in the sideboard, while I don't think it was good in every matchup, Zakros Decree, bringing it to GP Zakros, mostly as a meme. I'm very happy with this choice. There are definitely a lot of matchups where I thought about it and kind of decided otherwise. You got to hear me go through that, especially this last match with Platypeople, where I was debating bringing it in rather than one of Fall of Tracks. And Zakros Decree is just solid. It's very stable. I doubt we'll be seeing too much of it in post rotation formats. I don't think we'll see too much of it in Eternal. But the reality is that it is just very solid to swing the board state against these very aggressive decks. It's very good with the flash enchantments. Would have been another reason why, if I'd thought more carefully about Zakros Decree's inclusion, I probably should and would have gone up to more copies of Omen of Slaughter. But that's just sort of another case of a big oversight on this deck. But yeah, Zakros Decree felt fine when it came up. And it came up enough post sideboard that I'm content with including this card. I think it did feel like it had a home here. So overall, I'll show you a little bit of what I've started thinking about for a post-rotation or like rotation-proof build of the deck. This is not perfect in any means, and it includes some things that I've mentioned I might not include in future builds of this deck. Like, we're still on 2 Cyhawk, still on the full 4 Chronicles, not a complete sideboard, but like we've got the clicks in the sideboard at least. We've got Earthly Penchants in the main. We've got something that kind of resembles a replacement to Path of Phynax and Harvesting Blade, which is something that had been on my mind as well, just on the basis of it being a hit off of Revolt of the Palace. And then this just exiles the cards completely and can make our smaller creatures much more threatening over time. One of the biggest things, though, other than Earthly Penchants, that I feel like I could have spent more time looking at was Laystone of Being. We're a very black mana dense deck in the base 75 that we brought, but Laystone of Being is a really solid tool to help buy us time through the life gain of this ability and its ability to generate bodies on the board with its cycling cost. And running Laystone of Being gives us an excuse to run Opulent Vantage. Vantage being both a decent colorless source to help fix our mana. Can cast copies of Sealing Strike as though the colorless mana were white. Works well with our coalesced lands. I moved down one coalesced core and went up the 2 vantages and a swamp to get to the 24 lands of this current build. But maybe you'd still want to be on 2 cores, 3 swamps, just so that way core can let the vantage tap for black more often, because the vantage is always tapping for white when it's casting a spell, with the basis of Mesa just not really helping this fix mana at all. At least not for these spells, but it does fix for Revolt, does fix for Looming Psyhawk, though that's not super important. Yeah, I think Vantage, just buying us more time, providing a bit more life gain in the mana base would have been really nice. And then its synergy with Laystone of Being, especially like the turn 1 play of Vantage gain 2 to 22, Laystone of Being, cast off the Vantage, go to 23 on end step and make a 3/3. That's a really good start that we just denied ourselves by not including Laystone of Being or considering it in any capacity. And if we're looking at Laystone of Being, there is an argument to push towards a contest coordinator shell that is running more tools that care about cycling. There are more things that I did not include, things like Ruiner's Procession that I could look at or see looking at. Ruiner's Procession, I think I'd mentioned in the initial deck tech, of just being a nice tool for sacrificing some of your powerful things in play and then looping them with Ruiner's Procession. And then even just in a fail case, Ruiner's Procession, getting back a fetch land, like rebuying a Primal Fisher, is huge in its own right. So definitely a lot of interesting directions to take this shell in the future. I think there are some really cool things going on here, even if it just felt a little awkward in the times where it just didn't quite come together. The deck's got a lot of grind potential, though. You saw that in the not the semifinal, the quarterfinals with us going down to a 1-lander 5-card hand and still nearly getting there in game 1 of that quarterfinals. So while I have expressed a lot of misgivings on where the deck is at right now, do not mistake that for me thinking that the deck is bad by any measure, and don't come away from this video with the lesson being that this deck is bad. Revolt of the Palace has some cool things to do in this format. While I said I don't think it could be, I don't think at the moment it will remain a format all-star by any measure. I also would not be surprised to see a Revolt deck win a GP at some point in its tenure. It's a very good card, and there's a lot of good things you can do with it. And of course, this is all discussing what the format will look like, not knowing what the incumbent September set will be. So obviously, when we get into the set review next month, I will have to talk about Revolt of the Palace on any particular cards that are relevant, even ones that aren't in white or black, because while I've spent a lot of time looking at white-black builds of Revolt of the Palace, especially as Theros Age of Trax rotates, there's merit to consider a build of Revolt of the Palace that's not on Earthly Vengeance, not on Corpse Pyrofiend, not on Data Weaver, and is instead playing a second or even a third color with Revolt of the Palace to try and get more meaningful permanence into play quickly, and perhaps get more creatures that can relevantly use that double strike clause. So with everything said, I'm happy with how I did in this GP. I wish I could have gone further, but I'll take a top 8 performance nonetheless. No complaints here on that regard. Congratulations again to Platy people for that win in the quarterfinals. Good luck again to everyone who is still in the top cut matches and has more games to play ahead of them. I don't think I could pick a single person that I'm rooting for right now. I love a lot of the decks that are in the top cut field, even cases where I've been pretty open about not liking mono black control. I'm not going to deny that the deck is sweet. It is more of a personal dislike of that strategy rather than me thinking the deck is bad by any measure. So, win was absolutely earned by Platy there, don't think me disliking mono black means I won't absolutely hoot and holler if Platy wins this tournament. So, and that's an if, because there's some strong competition in front of them. So, yeah, I had fun with this GP. I had fun with the deck building process, had fun with the stream to go over the deck lists alongside Dr. Chipmunk. And I had fun with the Curator's Cube tournament running concurrent to this. I definitely think I've played a little sloppy in my last few matches this month between Curator's Cube and this tournament. But I know one of my goals moving forward is I want to be a little clearer on describing what is happening on the board as it's happening. Because I recognize that I keep things kind of small. You can't really read the cards on my screen unless I hover over them. So it really encourages you, the viewer, to be more intimately familiar with the format, which is not great for people who are watching this who might be more entry level. So I've been thinking about making videos talking about sort of introductory ideas to the format. But one of the things that I can do is just remind myself to make this card viewer window larger, hover over cards as I'm talking about them more, and spend more time detailing what is on the battlefield and what is in my hand as the game goes, rather than just saying card names. So if you're more of a seasoned professional with the format, just a heads up, the videos might get a little more explainy moving forward, but I've had some folks who have told me that my videos have helped them get into the format. That means a lot to me. I really love to hear that I'm helping introduce people to this wonderful, wonderful play environment. And so I want to do what I can for those of you who are less familiar with the format to have future videos of mine, particularly gameplay videos, provide you a more accessible window into the format. Though, of course, I am always going to champion sitting down and playing this format for yourself because I think it is absolutely worth your time to just check the format out. Won't cost you a dime. You just get to sit down, check out the format. And if that sounds like it's your pace, if you enjoyed what you saw so far here, or if anything that you see in the future catches your interest, the link to the Custom Magic Discord server is always down in the description below for you to join the community, start playing Revolution, and I think you'll have a good time with it. So with all of that said, with the GP wrapped for me at least, last video of the month will probably be... I can't give you an exact date because I don't know how quickly the future matches in the GP will go, but I am hoping to record a finals commentary of the finals match this GP. If I can't catch it live, I'll ask the players for the replays, just so that way I can make sure that I'm getting that finals match to you all. But in the meantime, hope you all take care. Hope you all had fun with this run and with the Curator's Cube run and everything that we've been up to here. And I look forward to next month's special GP and to seeing you all in the Revolution chat. Bye-bye.